Hi, my name's Ian Goodwin. I'm going to give a brief update of the project Smarter Pear Orchards, which is part of the PIPS3 program of work. So first of all, a bit of background, why the research is needed. So first of all, there's quite a number of new fresh market cultivars that are being grown by the industry, and they have great potential to expand export and domestic markets. However, we need to make sure that the fruit that comes from these cultivars is attractive to consumers, it tastes great, and has consistent quality. So that's really what we're aiming to achieve as part of this project. But of course, growers are also faced by increases in extreme weather events, which can be detrimental to the quality of the fruit. So overall, the objective of the project is to develop profitable, smart, climate-smart pear orchard systems that go beyond the use of conventional orchard management practices. And below that objective is there a number of dot points that are associated with the outcomes of the project. So first of all, recommendations on tree density, rootstocks and training systems, more efficient irrigation, better understanding of crop load management by growers, and increased knowledge of colour determinants, not only for growers, but also for us as researchers. And we're also going to be looking at innovative netting design, which we haven't commenced yet, but that'll be part of this project as well. And lastly we are developing up sensing tools that can measure tree size, flower and fruitlet number, fruit size and fruit colour that will be commercially available to growers so that they can take those sort of observations. So the work's being done at both the experimental pear orchard at the Tatura Smart Farm, and it's also being done in a few commercial orchards in the Golden Valley. These are various photos of both the experimental pear orchard at Tatura, but also I've included a couple of photos in the centre there of what we call the Cartographer, which is basically a sensorised platform that can drive up and down rows to capture images of trees and then do an analysis to take some of those measurements I was talking about in the previous slide. In other words, things like fruit size, fruit colour, etc. So from here on, I'll be presenting an update of some of the results from the project. So first of all, what's the effects of training systems and tree density on yield? This figure here is showing year after planting in the horizontal axis up to 8 years after planting versus cumulative yield over that period of time. And you can see from this figure that the Open Tatura 4 litre system, it is on Quince A for your notation. It's these results, all of these planting systems are on Quince A. You can see there that the red line, the Open Tatura, has exceeded the other two training systems. With respect to the effect of tree density on cumulative yield, again, this is on Quince A rootstock. You can see the red line there is for the Open Tatura system, and as tree density increases, our cumulative yield has increased. The other systems, what we call our vertical systems and our traditional ways of growing pears, central leader, for example, pretty much there was no relationship with tree density. So what were the effects of training systems and tree density on colour? So again, what we've got in these two figures is tree density versus, first of all, on the left, blush coverage, in other words, percentage of the fruit surface that's got a red blush on it. And the figure on the right is our red colour intensity. So these results show that as tree density increases, there is a decline in both blush coverage and red colour intensity, particularly in the Open Tatura system and less so in the vertical systems. I would also point out too that the arrows there are showing the three different traditional systems. We've got our vase, which actually came out with a very high blush coverage, and our spindle and central leader training systems, which were very low. So obviously the vase is, for some reason, we're getting better light penetration into the fruiting zone and getting higher colour. These results are a summary of the rootstock effects on yield and colour. So separate to the previous work I was just showing, we actually have a dedicated experiment looking at the interaction of cultivar with rootstock. So these three figures are from 3 different cultivars. 131, 118 and 0534. From these three figures, first of all, the 131, the cultivar 131, which is marketed as under the name Rico, obviously yield over each one of those years is substantially higher than the other two cultivars. But with respect to rootstocks, the interesting effect here is that the BP1 rootstock is consistently lower each year than the other three rootstocks, whereas quince A and quince C are consistently the higher of the rootstocks in terms of yield. D6, it goes in between depending on the cultivar. So, for example, with 131, D6 is equivalent to the quince A rootstocks, but it's low in the cultivar 118, a little bit above BP1 rootstock. The table below is showing the colour results, and we can see from the table that the only significant impact of the rootstocks on colour was in the cultivar 131, where blush coverage and red colour intensity were substantially lower in D6 rootstock, which we would expect given the vigour that we get out of a D6 rootstock compared with the quince A, quince C and BP1. With respect to crop load relationships, this figure here is showing the relationship between fruit weight and fruit number per hectare, and it's indexed against percentage light interception. As you can see from that, there's a trend where as fruit number increases, our fruit weight is declining, which we all would expect. But from this data, what we've been able to do is come up with some recommendations as to what target fruit number you would need to leave on a tree to get a particular target fruit weight. In this case, it's a 180 gram fruit. So what you can see in the table here is an example. If your light interception is 30%, in other words, reasonably small trees, you would need to leave on approximately 109 fruit per tree to get 180 gram fruit. And at the other extreme, where you might have reasonably large trees, 60% light interception, you could leave on about 220 fruit per tree to again get a target fruit weight of 180 grams. Determinants of colour expression. These are results of pooled results from each of the three cultivars that we've got in our experimental pear orchard. Overall, there's a trend for decreasing both blush coverage on the pears as well as red colour intensity as light interception increases. Results from the Cartographer, the mobile sensing platform, where we've been looking at both calibrating and validating measurements of tree size, fruit number, fruit size, and fruit colour. So here we've got a compilation of results, not only of maps, in other words, spatial maps within an orchard block of things like tree height and down the bottom right-hand corner and fruit colour. We've also got some figures there of the relationship between the observations that we take manually by, for example, counting fruit or measuring fruit diameter versus what the sensing platform is actually spitting out. So these all show pretty good results. Firstly, there's quite obvious differences in tree height within that orchard where we've got rows of open to Tura trellis versus, for example, traditional central leader trees, which are much taller. That's the figure on the left-hand side there. In the middle, very good relationship between what we count in terms of fruitlet numbers and what the cartographer spits out. And again, where we're quite actually excited with the ability of the instruments to be able to predict fruit diameter, a very tight relationship between our measured by hand, observed fruit diameter versus what the cartographer is spitting out. And finally, with respect to what we're also looking at with the cartographer, and that's sensing flower number, doing counts on flowers so that we can actually map out spatially the flower distribution. So the images on the photos on the left are actually the images that are captured by the cartographer. You can see that that's the image that then gets processed by a whole lot of artificial intelligence algorithms to actually count the number of flowers on those trees. And the map in the middle is our planting systems experimental block. And you can see there's quite a lot of variation in flower counts. These measurements were taken at full bloom. And the figure on the right there is showing the relationship between our observed flower cluster numbers versus what's predicted by the cartographer. It's a very good relationship. We're quite happy about that. And of course, what we use is this sort of data to then, well, firstly, it's a calibration process so that we can accurately convert what's predicted by the cartographer to actual flower clusters. But then, of course, we have to go through the process of validating that relationship, which we're doing at the moment. So that's a summary, an update of the project so far. Growers and service providers are welcome to come to the Tatura Smart Farm when it's all physically possible, safe in other words. But we are basically open to the public to show you what we're doing. There's also a couple of web pages that have got some of this, got some of these results and some articles on the project as well. That's on the Horticulture Industry Network website as well as APEL's website. And we've also got a few articles in the Australian Fruit Grower magazine, and we'll continue to provide those articles. That's all. Thank you very much.